Welcome everyone to another video in this November to Remember series. I hope you guys are enjoying it so far. I know I'm kind of enjoying it. It's revitalizing my enjoyment of doing videos, and I'm glad to announce that the Q&A series is back, and we've got a very special edition this time, hashtag Smokey. Thanks to all of you that took to Twitter, submitted your questions to the Twitter handle down in the description box down below, at Off the Rope Show, for this special Q&A. The next Q&A is coming up Saturday. And you can go ahead now, after you watch this video, go to Twitter, tweet your questions to Off the Rope Show about hashtag OTRS. That is anything and everything pertaining to OTRS. Videos, the channel, what happened to the old channel, newsletter, whatever the case might be about individual members. No question is out of bounds. This is your chance. Anything that you've ever wanted to know, anything you've ever felt that you had the right to have answered, this is your chance to get it answered by me. I'm not running and ducking or hiding from anything. No unreasonable question is going to go unanswered. That's the bottom line. It's a fair question. Even if it's a negative question, positive question, does not matter. A fair question deserves a fair answer. And you guys, a lot of you have watched this Off the Rope Show, OTRSCentral now for some cases a year and a half, 2 years, almost 3 years. December 6th is going to be 3 years since we started doing videos on YouTube. So I feel like, frankly, a lot of you guys have a lot of probably unanswered questions about different things, the justifications for different things, the logic and rationale behind certain things, why we did certain things, and you deserve those answers, and I'm going to give them to you. So, like I said, watch this video. Any questions you want answered, go to Twitter, tweet them to Off the Rope Show using the hashtag OTRS. Let's get started with this very special Q&A, though, hashtag Smokey. And this is in honor, of course, of legendary YWC shooter and, my friend and family member, Smokey, who unfortunately passed away a little over 2 weeks ago. I still miss him every day, continue to miss him every day. I hope him and Precious and Feisty are somewhere. I don't know if there's a heaven or not. And, that's a discussion for another day entirely. But I know that there should be for those three, and I hope they're raising all types of hell. I hope they're doing all types of deuces and fours business. They're getting stoned as fuck off of some catnip, and they're eating all the cheeseburgers they could ever desire. Let's get started with this Q&A, though. At XLittleNickX365 asks, what did you like most about Smokey? What wasn't there to like about Smokey? Of all the other great things that he did, he was, as much as his on-camera persona was this big badass, and he was a big badass, he was also a very soft, lovey teddy bear. He was so sweet. He was so loving. I think that's the thing I'm going to miss about him the most. The thing I liked about him the most was that he always had kind of this even-keel personality to never too high, never too low. Smokey was Smokey. But you always knew that he was loyally going to be there and give you his love every single day. That's what I'm going to miss the most about him, and that was my favorite thing about him above all the other great things that he brought to the table. At Peter Jacobs 93 asked, what was Smokey's worst habit? Eating, frankly. But you know what? I always put it this way. Would you rather live from a human perspective, would you rather live 80 years and have those be okay years, or would you rather live maybe 60 or 65 years but get every ounce of life you possibly could and do everything you wanted to do and enjoyed it to the fullest in those 60 or 65 years? I probably would take that option over the 80 mediocre years. And that's why I look at it with Smokey. He ate too much. He loved to lick himself, but by God, his 8+ years on this planet, he got every ounce of his life out of it he possibly could. At Larrikin Nerd and at Colton587 basically asked the same question. What was Smokey's reaction to first meeting Summer? The funny thing is that we got Summer. I didn't move out here until the middle of July. I technically got Summer out here, went down to Newport News to get her towards the end of June. And when I was getting ready to make the official move from Iowa out here to Richmond, I had to take Summer with me in the rental to go back, to drive back from here in Richmond to Waterloo, Iowa, which if any of you have ever made a drive like that, it's hell. It was like 1,200 plus miles. It was horrible. Never again. Never again will I drive that far. And then having to make the return trip back. So I had to come back to Iowa, and the first time Smokey and Summer met was actually at the old OTRSCentral studios in Waterloo, Iowa, also known as my old apartment there. And, Smokey's reaction, he was a little upset. He hissed a little bit. I gave him a can of tuna. That seemed to appease him a little bit. But after a little bit, took him maybe 2-3 days, he got over it. And then we got in the car, and we made the big journey back out here to Richmond, Virginia once and for all to stay. And, you know, he was cool with Summer. He really was. I have no complaints about it. He was really nice to her. You know, she's a puppy, so she's pulling on his ears and doing other types of dumb puppy stuff. And, you know, he was just go with the flow most of the time. Occasionally, if she went too far, he would hiss, he would swing, but he didn't hate her. He was very loving to her like he was loving to everybody, I think. At W. Rain Foster, we all know Smokey loved Mark Henry and Sheamus. However, which wrestlers did he hate in wrestling the most? Easy answer is John Felix Anthony Cena, no question. It seemed like every time Cena would come on the TV, Smokey would find a way to magically leave the room, and the next thing you'd hear would be a digging at the litter box, and he'd be dropping a huge Smokey shit. John Cena, beyond question, he hated that guy. Never would stick around to watch his matches unless he was wrestling Mark Henry. At ABTaz12, how did Smokey mark out to Mark motherfucking Henry or Sheamus? Well, you know, Smokey was one of those guys that he only watched what he wanted to watch. When he knew Mark Henry, it was like a subliminal thing almost. It was like a telepathic connection where he knew Mark Henry or Sheamus were going to be on. He would come out in the room. He would come out and sit and watch. He'd lick himself. He'd eat some food. That's how we'd mark out to Mark motherfucking Henry or Sheamus. At Disco Ben, also known as Nebek Sid, has 2 questions. Where did Smokey get his favorite cheeseburger, and what was Smokey's best moment? He actually liked the McDouble from McDonald's. That was his favorite. You know, he wouldn't turn down Burger King or Hardee's or Wendy's or any of these other places. But I've always found that his favorite, and Precious his favorite too, frankly, they both loved the McDouble from McDonald's the most. That's the way they always liked it the most. And his best moment, yeah, it's hard to think of just one best moment. Yeah, you know what? I do have a best moment, actually, both for him and Precious. And they had a lot of great ones. But there was one time there in Iowa, we had problems with these little kids were coming around and, you know, kicking on people's doors and trying to break in and shit. And I was home, actually, when this happened, and somebody tried to kick in our front door. And wouldn't you know, both Precious and Smokey, and I mean Smokey, bolted. Like, seriously bolted. This is the sound he made when he sprinted. But he actually beat Precious to the door. I shit you not. You think I'm lying. Ask some of the old OTRS crew when they saw a can of food get opened. Smokey beat Precious out to it. That's no lie. And when they heard that door getting kicked, they actually ran to the door, and Smokey started hissing. He was standing his ground. He was going to protect me. He was going to protect everybody in the house. I'll never forget that for as long as I live. They were willing to stand up and protect their turf and protect me, and I always appreciated that. At the Kyle Shevlin, did you ever get stoned with Smokey? No, I haven't smoked weed in probably at least, no, I think it's been at least 8 years. Maybe 2005 was the last time I actually smoked any weed. Can't now because if I do, it could potentially drive my pulse up, and I don't like that feeling, so I'd rather not. He loved to get stoned all the time, though. He loved his catnip. So did Precious, so did Feisty. That was like one of their favorite activities to do as a Deuces and Fours unit. At Duke THS, where did the inspiration for Smokey's voice come from? You know, Duke is one of those things, man, where you're looking at it. He's about a 30-pound gray cat, and he loves Mark Henry and Sheamus. He didn't need to come on and have this type of voice. And he most certainly does not need to have a lisp and come on here and say, if you don't like Mark Henry, I'm going to scratch your eyes out, silly. No, Smokey was all man. He made many babies over the years. As a result, he needed to have a man's voice. A man's voice. And there was somebody I used to work with that talked very much like that. Reminded me a lot of Smokey in some ways. So as a result, I'm like, you know what? This is how Smokey needs to sound. That was the inspiration. At Dylan Schwartz, you said Smokey's love for Mark Henry and Sheamus was legit, and it was. And I have plenty of witnesses to that fact. How about Kenny King? Also very legit. Also very legit. Not on the level of Sheamus. Definitely not on the level of Mark Henry. But again, who is on the level of Sheamus and Mark Henry? But he loved Kenny King too. He would make sure to come out whenever he knew Kenny King was going to have a match or a segment. He could hear it in the other room where he was maybe laying on the scratching post getting high or licking himself or eating. He'd come in and watch some Kenny King too. Also, why was Smokey in more videos than others? Well, was kind of one of those things where Smokey was easier to record because he tended to sit still more, and he seemed to be more of a ham to the camera, where Precious and Feisty would move and gyrate, so it was a little harder sometimes to corral them and get them on camera. So that's part of the reason why Smokey was in more vids than others. Also, it was a great character concept. It got over. People really liked Smokey. They liked the character and what it represented, so it made a little more sense to feature him in some more videos. And another thing is, too, is I always felt at times, because I had Precious and Feisty for a few years longer than Smokey, I always felt like at times that, it may be silly, but, I looked at Precious one way, and then I looked at Feisty another way, and then there was kind of Smokey, and Smokey was never intended for me to keep long term, but I'm glad I did. Like I told you before, one of the best decisions I ever made. As a result, I think featuring him more in videos was maybe a way for me, in my own mind, to kind of justify my love for him on a similar level to Precious and Feisty. That's what it is. At 619fanguy at yahoo.com, excuse me. At 619fanguy at yahoo.com. Let's try that again. There we go. Who is Smokey's favorite faction? Who's his favorite guy from each era? The Golden Era, the Attitude Era, and the PG Era. His favorite faction of all time, absolutely beyond question, would be the Nation of Domination. His favorite guy from the Golden Era, I don't know if he really would have had one, but if he did, it probably would have been the Junkyard Dog, probably. The Attitude Era, Mark Henry. And the PG Era, Mark Henry. That simple, really. At Jake B253, favorite backstraight a whole wheel of cheese moment where Smokey did something so ridiculous all you could do is laugh. There actually was a moment like this. It was back in 2005. He was about 4 months old. It was Thanksgiving. It was him and his one brother, Chico, or Lucky. This is the one that passed away when he was about 1.5 years. And had Thanksgiving dinner, actually had my mom over, and it was crazy because I cooked this turkey. Turkey has like tryptophan in it, so it can make you sleepy if you eat a lot of it. Well, they had pigged out on some turkey. I made them both some turkey and some gravy. And man, after about a half hour, after they had eaten that turkey, all of a sudden, they're sitting on the one chair, both of them. Smokey's like, his head's like this, and then his brother's head, he's just falling asleep with his head up, and then his head would fall down, and he'd come back up, and he'd fall down. And that was maybe that moment right there. The other moment might have been the first time, and again, this is him and his brother. They were rolling buddies, It was the first time I had this cat-shaped pillow. Don't even remember how I got it, why I got it. Maybe I thought it was cool for them to lay on, whatever. But the first time I came home from work and I saw Chico and Smokey running a train on this pillow. One in the front, one in the back. They were tag teaming that shit. That was a fucking legendary moment. That was so ridiculous, all I could do was laugh. It was like on the scene in that movie Click. Well, this was in the real world. This was hilarious. At ZeroCool1389, what was Smokey's favorite pay-per-view? He had several, but it has to be Night of Champions 2011 when Mark motherfucking Henry beat Randall Keith Orton for the WWE, or World Heavyweight Championship, excuse me. That was his favorite pay-per-view, his shining moment. At CM Pup, excuse me. Besides cheeseburgers, what was Smokey's other favorite foods? He loved chicken, he loved tuna, he loved soft cat food. Didn't really like to eat hard cat food that much until the last few months of his life. Maybe it was a little easier on his stomach, I don't know. But there were times where I'd catch him and I would leave like a piece of toast on the table and he'd fucking jump up on that table and he'd yank the piece of toast off and my piece of toast was gone. He would eat hash browns, he'd eat eggs, he'd eat bacon, he'd eat sausage. Whatever the mood would strike him, he'd eat all types of different things. His favorite food other than cheeseburgers, though, if there was one for sure, would have to be tuna. Him and Precious both loved tuna. That was their second favorite food. Well, Precious might have been fried chicken, then cheeseburgers, and then tuna. Whereas Smokey might have been cheeseburgers, tuna, fried chicken. There you go. And who loves Smokey more, Precious or Feisty? I think Feisty kind of tolerated him at times. She was always Precious's girl. And, Smokey would occasionally be like, you gonna give it up to me, bitch, real easy like, you damn right. And, sometimes she would. That was my little girl, my little ho-ho heifer. But she was always Precious's first and foremost. Precious might occasionally just let him tiptoe through the tulips, to smell a little bit of the roses. I think him and Precious had a bit of a strictly, purely platonic heterosexual bromance, which is understandable. They were bros for 8 years. So I probably would say Precious. They had a better relationship between whether it be Smokey and Precious or Smokey and Feisty. I would say Smokey and Precious, yeah. And those are the founding members of Deuces and Four. So that was a bit of art imitating life, if you will. At Triple H's God 200 has the last questions that will round out this very special hashtag Smokey Q&A. What was the story of how you got feisty? Feisty actually became a product of a relationship, and what I mean is that I had a girl at the time, and this is back when I was 21, and her friend had this freaking cat and was in a bad environment. So I took her in. I was taking her in for the girlfriend. Well, fortunately for me, the girlfriend is long gone out of the picture, and I got the cat instead. And I'm thankful every day for that. That was so much better. That was better for me. So that's how I ended up with Feisty. I kind of looked at it as too, well, Precious. He's got somebody to hang around with, and he's got a built-in piece of ass, and he deserved it, I felt. And she loved it, and he loved it, so they went at it all the time. Used to be a lot of times people would come over and they see Precious pounding the shit out of Feisty. They thought it was cool. Maybe it was, and maybe that's just us being stupid humans. I don't know. But that's the story. All I've got Feisty was basically she was in a bad situation. She wasn't being very well taken care of. She was almost kind of an abusive situation. So I decided I was going to take her in, and it was designed to be this girlfriend's cat, and she kind of left it out of the picture, and the cat stayed with me, and the cat was always going to end up staying with me, I guess, and that's pretty much how I came to get Feisty. Precious was very simply, I know you didn't ask about it, but I'm going to say it anyways. Precious was an alley cat. I got him right after I turned 18. I had my first job. I was working at Eagle Country Market, making just barely over minimum wage, which back then, for some of you younger guys, minimum wage was like $5.15 or $5.25. Some of the older viewers will know what I'm talking about here. So that was my first ever job, and I'd see Precious hanging out in the freaking alley. He was chasing squirrels. He was beating asses of other cats. He was climbing trees and getting himself back down. And then eventually, I just ended up taking him in, and he stayed with me for almost 14 years. And then Smokey, I've told the story before about how I took in his mama, and she was pregnant and I didn't know it, so she gave birth to 3 kitties. I found a home for the youngest kitty, but I kept Smokey and his older brother, who was technically called Lucky because when he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck, so I had to cut the cord and saved his life then, even though unfortunately he passed away when he was a year and a half old. And then Smokey always stuck with me. There was a point in time where I was actually going to try and find a home for Smokey, but for some reason, something told me don't get rid of him, and I never did. I just kept him. People used to make fun of me all the time for having the 3 cats and all of this and all of that, but screw them. I'm glad I had those 3 cats. They were a very big part of my identity for a very big number of years. I miss all 3 of them tremendously. One last question Triple H's God 200 has is, were any of the Deuces and Four members Bear fans? They all had to be. They were living with me. Precious was probably the biggest of the Bear fans. He would actually come and watch some of the games with me. Although I knew when he used to start rubbing up on me, he used to start giving Daddy some loving, I knew that was not a good sign for my Bears because he traditionally did that when he knew the Bears were about to lose. So whenever Precious would come up next to me and there'd be a Bears game on, I'd be like, go away, no, get away. Because I knew what that signified. It was a superstitious thing, but it usually bore out to be true when Precious start coming up and be like, Daddy, purring and giving me loving, rubbing up on my side, rubbing my hand. I'd be like, damn it, I know they're going to lose now. So I guess that was his way of trying to comfort me for the inevitable disappointment that was going to come with being a Bears fan. So again, this has been helpful to me a little bit. I hope you guys have enjoyed this. I'm glad you guys participated in this. Remember, on Saturday, the next Q&A is going to be up. It's hashtag OTRS, where you can ask any and every question you've ever wanted answered about anything pertaining to OTRS in our almost 3-year history now. Thanks again for so many of you that enjoyed Smokey. I know I enjoyed having him on camera. I know deep down he got some pleasure out of it, and I hope you guys enjoyed this Q&A. I'll see you later.